Hey everyone, this is your favorite friend Jay, and today I'm so privileged and happy to talk to Bobby Bukowski, a great cinematographer whose works I seriously enjoyed. He worked with directors like Nancy Savoca, Mark Pellington, Joe Berlinger, Oren Moverman, and he made these amazing movies. Most recently, Till, which we watched, and Daniel Deadweiler blew us all away last year. So, Bobby, I'm just so happy to talk to you.
Likewise, nice to see you, Jaylan.
Nice to see you too. So, Bobby, when I was researching you, I read that you took a trip around the world to discover yourself. What did you find when you went around the world?
I found that the world is vast and there's so many more choices than what I was given as a child. I grew up in New York City, and it's an international community for sure, but I still felt like I was living, in a Western society with, Judeo-Christian kind of ethics and morality. And that's very limiting. And I remember one of my big eye openers was when I landed in New Delhi, India. And I got out of the plane and I hit the streets looking for a cab. And all of a sudden, I realized, oh my God, I'm not home. The smells, the color, the sound, everything was completely foreign to me. And it was just like being reborn, because all of the molecules of even the air around me were different. So I think traveling really gave me a renaissance and a rebirth, a new way to see, the new way to hear, a new way to feel. I remember spending much time in India, and when I came home, my mother, who I'm very close to, grabbed my face, and I was gone for almost a year, and she looked at me and she said, "Who are you?" It was that kind of thing where completely transformed. I had been following an entourage of Tibetan Buddhists around India along the Ganges River, all their sacred sites, Buddhist sites. It was really the footsteps of the Buddha, and the Dalai Lama was leading that entourage. And so you could imagine just a whole new way of seeing life for me through the Buddhist culture was really interesting to me, having been raised as a Roman Catholic, So, and just the very thing of life, it's just like in our society, in America, Western society, a lot of society is like, oh, if you're not a success by the time you're 25 years old, you're a wash up. And then you
Same
go to a
here.
place, right? You go to a place like India and you're like, oh, well, you'll be reborn and reborn and reborn and reborn. And then you're like, oh, okay, this takes the pressure off a little bit.
Yes.
I think it also just made me see in a different way. And I guess that's what led me to cinematography was just that my senses were so reawakening is just all I could think of. Like I was physically seeing in a different way. I was seeing color and light and in a different way. And I had my still camera with me, but I also had a small black and white video camera that I just wanted to, document things just so that I could watch them when I got back home. And with that material, I got home and a friend of mine, she was a film editor and she was looking at my stuff and she goes, "Oh, have you ever considered, a career of cinematography?" And I was like, "No, I don't even really know what that is." So I did some research and I was like, yeah, this would be great. So with this material that I had, I applied to the graduate school at NYU, Tisch School of the Arts, and I was accepted with scholarship. I didn't have any money, so that was good that I was able to do that. But really, in school is where I honed my craft. The great thing about school is that everybody around you is a novice, and everybody around you, the best thing that we all do together is fail. So I feel like we as craftsmen and as artists and as human beings, we need to know what failure is. We have to we have to fall on our face and get up, and then we trip again, but the next time we get up, it's a little easier. And then, so I remember shooting the first film with a classmate of mine, and we were shooting on film, and the film came back from the lab, and literally everything was black. Like there was no image.
Oh,
So the director, the guy says to me, "Oh my God, look at this waste of time and everything." So I said, "You know what? I actually did you a really big favor, because if anybody saw what you were doing, you would not be doing it for very long." So I said, so we're even. I failed, you failed. Let's, round two, let's try it.
wow. But it feels like this trip to India has rubbed off on you. Like you entered with this kind of serenity, like you've had this experience before you started your career, and this is, I think it made the difference.
No, it was a pure gift. I had been studying medicine before that, and my mother wanted to be a doc wanted and my father wanted me to be a doctor. They're working class people, so they wanted a better life for their children. But it wasn't me. I tried it, and it wasn't me. And even when I was in India, I met the doctor of the Dalai Lama, the Tibetan doctor, and he was amazing. And when I told him that I had been studying medicine, he said to me, "Well, do you want to study Eastern medicine with me?" And I was like, "What kind of commitment would that be?" He said, 15 years
Oh my,
of, stu- of studying. I was young, and I was like, 15 years, that's like a lifetime. I can't do that.
exactly.
So
Wow.
I ran away from that, and I came back home, and very quickly my career didn't take off, but very quickly, even after school, I was consistently working. Look, I was working for no money, and working, washing dishes and waiting tables in the meantime when I didn't have a job. But you know, um, if you stay to it, and it happens.
Exactly. So, when was the first job where you felt like, okay, Bobby, now like you're doing it, Bobby. You're a cinematographer. Which movie, which job?
I think that was I think it was you mentioned her, Nancy Savoca, and a lovely, lovely, amazing woman, who was born too early, because if she was making movies now, she'd be getting a lot more credit. This was
Yeah,
back in 1990, and it was still a boys' club, the film
exactly.
industry. So,
Dogfight.
yeah, so we made Dogfight, and it was the first time that I felt like I was actually able to hire a crew that was professional, that knew more than I did. My main thing was like, the minute I have the opportunity to get people around me who know more than I do, that's what I want, because we're always students, aren't we, Jaylan? We're always learning.
Definitely.
So, and I think the minute you tell yourself that you stop learning is when you stop growing, and that's dangerous. But I think Nazi's film was the first time I was like, oh yeah, I had the tools, I had enough of a budget, I had a very professional crew, and I was working with a director who I had immense respect for. Um, the funny thing is that we made a movie after that. It was called Household Saints, and it's a beautiful film. And last year we remastered it, and it played in the New York Film Festival this year in the um, in the section where they replay old movies. So
Yeah.
that was really, really nice. And also we remastered Dogfight for Criterion. So it's great. It's funny that all these things that I thought were sleeping came back awake, and I think it just speaks to their goodness, and their
I love
greatness.
I
Yeah.
love Dogfight, first of all, because I love her direction and the idea that a woman is behind this movie that talks a lot about masculinity, femininity, the relationships between men and women. It's just a spectacular film for me, but also because I'm a big, big River Phoenix fan. I just love him so much, and I feel like he had this ethereal quality about him. So, okay, there is this scene where he's just going out of the bus and he just smokes, and you feel like the camera is encapsulating this moment, these iconic moments of an actor whom we feel is a movie star, smoking, and you have the camera on him. So, as a cinematographer, do you know when you're capturing these moments, like, oh my God, I have a moment, I have a scene, like people are going to remember this scene, whether it's that or Daniel Didweiler crying and the camera is on her face. Do you feel these moments, they're gonna linger?
Of course. I mean, I must say, since it's the most recent, with Danielle, it was so palpable. There was like, I must say, as a cinematographer, I operate the camera. Not all cinematographers operate. A lot of cinematographers have operators, but I really like being in the vicinity of the actor because I feel like the actor's behavior really affects also my movement and how I respond to their behavior. With Danielle, I could I could not stop crying. Like every time you see her in the movie crying, I am behind the camera crying. It's just like, you're 5 feet away from this person. She has, as a human being, as she's acting this, she has a 13-year-old son, so she knows exactly what it would be like to lose a child. Um, and she's just an amazing actor. I just felt like we really had that, often after a take, she would just reach her hand out across to me and I would, and I'd just grab her hand and we would breathe deeply. Or if we had a moment, we could have a good hug. And, it's funny because we were the makeup hair woman who they were amazing. We were having interviews and she was like saying, oh, I couldn't get, every time I came to the set and I was looking for Bobby, I could never find him. And everybody was like, oh, he's over in a corner crying. It's like, I'm like, yeah, but it's humanity, So first, so certainly with something like that, yes, you feel it. It's very palpable. You're moved by it. The fact that you're moved by it informs your work, also inspires you knowing that you have the responsibility to do that actor honor by capturing it and being there for them and not letting them down and not having it out of focus and not having, all the things, and that the camera is in the right position to get what they're doing. So yeah, I feel like film is so beautiful because we all collaborate, and everything that someone else does touches you in a way that makes you better. I feel like everybody at every point of the film is there just to make it better. Whether it's someone who's bringing somebody a cup of coffee to make a moment of their lives comfortable, that's also contributing to the art of it. So there's not a single person on a movie set who's not contributing to what you see on the screen. With River, it was really interesting. I had just met him, and he's such a different person than that jarhead Marine that he plays in that movie. When I met River, I picked him up because we were going to a dinner, and I picked him up, and he walked out of an elevator because I was taking him to the dinner, and he had this long, long hair and this innocent look, and I was like, oh my gosh, it felt like I had met an angel. I was like, oh,
Exactly.
and then next day, the hair off, and then the face, and then the acting comes along. And that moment I remember because I think it's probably the opening shot of the film. It's like
Very.
we see the bus, and then it's coming closer, and then we see him walk out, and he stops and he takes a beat, and you see the pain on his face, you see the toughness on his face, and you're asking the question right away, like, what has this young man been through? I like when a movie starts with a question, when you meet a character and right away you're curious about, he's limping a little bit, so you're like, what is, you're looking at all the behavior. And I think as filmmakers, and probably as actors, everybody, we look very closely at human behavior. For me, I am very vigilant about watching how an actor moves, or not only their body, like how their eyes might go in a certain direction when they're going to do something. Sometimes you're following an actor, like they're sitting and they get up. The camera has to follow them. And at first it's very difficult because you're learning how to coordinate yourself to do that. In the beginning, you miss it a lot of times. And then I started watching actors' eyes, and I realized at a certain point, and it's all about human behavior, that normally when somebody gets up from where they're sitting, they look up because they want to see where they're going to, So like a simple thing like that told
Yeah.
me, like I would see their eyes like this, looking like this, and then they would do this, and then they would get up, and I would be like, oh, I would be prepared
Following
because
them.
because
Oh,
I was feeling, I was observing their behavior. I wasn't just watching them, I was actually feeling them.
okay. So this brings me to a question. Do some eyes, like, did some eyes kind of like attract your attention, even like, did you feel like, wow? Because for me, some actors are eyes. Like, you look into their eyes and you feel like, oh my God, what is this? You've seen something that you don't find in other actors. So which moment was that for you
Mm,
throughout your career?
so many actors, because I feel like really good actors, they do, that is their window. It's a cliche, but that idea that the eyes are a window to the soul, and I feel like there's so many actors that I've worked with that I feel like they're just as good, if not better, when they're in a shot and they're just listening. They're just like, we call them a reaction shot, right? But
Yeah.
like there are certain actors that they're not saying a word and the whole story is being told in their eyes. Certainly Danielle, certainly
Definitely.
Danielle, that um, we we learned that very early. We started testing. Normally before a film, you're testing the main actors because you want to see how to light them, and also what camera angles look better for the story and what kind of lenses you might want to capture with them. And then also you're testing things like giving the chance for hair and makeup to look at their work before they commit it to the final film. So we're doing a lot of these tests, and I'm working with my gaffer, and we're lighting her. And when we get to the lab and we see the film screened, we understand immediately that if we do nothing else in this film, we have to keep light in Danielle's eyes, because that tells the whole story. And even in the film, we have shots of her eyes that are like this big, filling the screen. So um, I must say, as a cinematographer, I should probably say that the stuff I most love shooting is like vista and landscape and everything. And I do love that. But if I had a choice of only one size of a shot to shoot, it would be an actor's face. It would just be like, that's your whole story, is in the face of an actor. So scenery, everything, yeah, it's important and it tells part of the story. But at the end of the day, for myself, I'm invested in the behavior of human beings, and the face is giving, and as you say, the eyes.
Exactly. Okay, so for me, when I imagine a cinematographer, he feels like a demigod controlling lighting. Like shadow here, this shadow creates that, the mood. So, okay, for me, for someone who is an outsider, like how do you make a lighting of a scene? Like how do you create the perfect lighting, and how do you discover what you want to do in a scene, where to put the shadow, who's in the dark, who's lit? So, how do you discover that?
Again, it's behavior. To me, it's first of all, as a novice cinematographer, what I started doing was just watching light. I just like, I would also use my friends to take them out for a coffee and lunch and just photograph them, just because, okay, let's sit by the window. And then they'd be talking and I would be just like, excuse me, but I just have to, and I would see, oh, the light is coming from the back and it's bouncing off of the table and it's coming back to them, or now there's a soft light that's over there and it's very high and it's hiding their eyes a little bit, but there's something interesting. If you were making a character who's hiding, maybe you don't want to show their eyes, because people say that you could always tell when a person is not telling the truth if you look at their eyes, because they'll shift their eyes, or they'll put their head down, or try to do that. So the idea that early in my career, it became about every moment became about chronicling light, see like, oh, what is that light doing? How is it doing that? And then start to relate it to what the script is calling for, what the story is calling for, what that particular moment is calling for. You mentioned Oren Moverman, and we made a film after The Messenger called Rampart. And Rampart is about a bad cop in LA, and he's quite evil. And Woody Harrelson plays this this character. And Oren in this movie just wanted me to have the camera in my hands, and we weren't rehearsing, and he just wanted me to capture, throw me in a room with the actors and, okay, we're going. So in that way, I had to be ready to light different parts of the room. But there were always parts of the set that were quite illuminated brightly. And then there were other areas in the set that were completely in darkness. And I realized very early, because actors are so used to looking at the cinematographer and say, oh, where is my mark? And where do I stand? And where is my light? And that wasn't existing in this movie. The director wasn't interested in that. So I said, look, Woody, let me put it this way. That corner over there, if you stand in that corner, you're black, you're going to disappear. If you stand around this area, you'll be lit, but it'll be a little dim. If you stand in this area, you'll be seen well. And if you stand in this area, it'll be so bright, it'll be overpowering. And then we started talking. And then we started realizing together that behaviorally, if you're not wanting to reveal something, you're not going to stand in the middle of the light with a light shining on you. You're going to go into a corner, recede. Yeah. I always think about being by yourself and going to a party. And you walk into a party and you feel great. You feel like you look good, you feel good. If something happened today, you feel good. And then you like go right into the middle of the party and there's light and you engage. Same thing. Why am I at this party? I look terrible. I feel awful. Where do you go sit in the corner and you sit in the dark? It's dark. So to answer your question very directly, the lighting becomes motivated by character motivation. To me, it's all about, is a character revealing themselves? Are they hiding themselves? Are they making themselves inconspicuous? Are they showing themselves off? That also has to do with the frame size, right? Like if someone is feeling very meek, and okay, so maybe you shoot them with the camera looking down on them a little bit, so it's a little heavy, and maybe they're far away because then they're smaller, but then if an actor and the character is feeling powerful, you could take the camera lower and you could look up to them, and like literally we look up to people, right, that have greatness. So that has to do, with the camera angle too. If you're looking up at somebody, you're kind of revering them. It's like you go to Florence and you see Michelangelo's statue of the David, and it's a gigantic statue, and the perspective is not, you're not standing on a ladder looking at its face, you're on the ground looking up, and the power of that figure is overwhelming. So just how we behave as human beings, is where the lighting comes from. Also the mood that the director wants to tell, is there supposed to be mystery? Is there supposed to be, I ask directors all the time for adjectives, just more about more than how is it supposed to look, how are we supposed to feel as an audience when we experience it? I'm interested in that. Oh, we should feel really joyous. Okay. We should feel completely imprisoned. Whatever those things are that the director wants to get across, because then that just makes your life like, oh, okay, joyful. I understand that, and I don't know. Exactly. We have a lot of tools and movement, lens, color, light those all are tools, you know.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Okay, Bobby. So I want to ask you about a movie that I really loved. And I don't know, it kind of got mixed reviews, but I just loved it. It's Land by Robin Wright. It was her directorial debut. And to be honest, for me, the idea of man versus nature, especially if it's a woman versus nature, is my favorite genre of all time. How did you approach this project? And how was it like working with Robin when she was like, this is her first directorial debut and she's a great actress and stuff like that?
I met Robin originally on the film Rampart that I was talking to you about as an actor. And the first scene that I shot of her, she was sitting in a bar with Woody Harrelson's character. And I was lighting, you know, and I was just tweaking this little light, this lamp that was over her, and I would put a little diffusion on it. Then I put a little white on the table to bring some light back up. And she's watching me and she's asking me a lot of questions. And then from then on, every time that I was doing a setup, she would stay on the set. Normally an actor goes away during setup time and gets ready or does whatever they want to do. And then they're called back to set when camera and everybody's ready for them. But I kind of sensed right away that she was really hungry to learn the process, that she wanted to know about everything. So several years later, when I read the script and she asked to meet me, you know, I said, I remember that. I remember, you know, I was wondering when you were going to direct a film because from the minute I met you, I could see that you had the eye not only of an actor, but as a director. She didn't want to act in that part originally because it's a lot to take on your first movie and also act in it. But you know, a lot of financing is always based on the actor in terms of how much money you can get is based on their, you know, their fame and their popularity.
Exactly.
And they weren't having much luck finding an actor at that point, and she wanted to go right away with the movie. So at one point, she just said, "Okay, I'll act in it." Um, the script, of course, appealed to me immediately. I love nature. I always go to nature to restore myself. It's always I live in the Pacific Northwest, so to me, if I'm feeling it all off, head to the forest, head to the sea. You
The
know,
sea.
breathe the air. Um, I'm a sea person. I'm happiest when my body is surrounded by salt water and throwing me around. And it's
Me too.
just, I feel like I'm being born again, right? And you live right on the sea anyway, right? So
Exactly. Sea wolf forever.
yeah. So it's a big part of your life. Um, so I definitely was familiar with the idea of nature as a resuscitator, nature as the healer. And certainly when I met her, I conveyed that to her that, you know, I was like, you shouldn't look at anybody else to shoot this movie because I don't think you may find a better cinematographer, but you're not going to find someone who's a cinematographer who's more in touch with nature than I am. So she said, okay, let's do this. Um, the cabin that we built on in the mountain, I slept in that cabin every single night that we shot there. And we're talking about no water, no heat. Um, it started in the summer, but in the winter it was freezing. One night a bear was trying to get into the
What?
cabin. I
Wow.
was sleep I was sleeping. When you see her sleeping, is like where I was sleeping. I wanted to be there because not only did I want to feel the place, but I had the camera so that if anything happened, like the snow or you get up in the morning and the sun is coming up and you see the water is dripping off of an icicle, or you see the sun come up. And normally those are the hardest shots to get in a film because everybody wants to get to the acting. You know, it's like the clock is ticking fast. And so I felt like I wanted to, a lot of the landscape shots that are in the movie and around the cabin are because I was just there by myself and able to do it and not
Taking it
have,
all in.
yeah, not having 30 people wait for me to roll the camera. And yeah, I got more and more familiar with it, you know? Um, I must say that again, the camera was in my hands, and it was often just she and I were in a situation together. And she said from the very beginning, she said, I don't want to go every time to back and watch the take recorded. And, she says, it takes us out of it. So sometimes I'm just going to know that I want to do another take, but I'm going to ask you, I'm going to rely on you that like, and I felt like, oh, that's a lot of responsibility, And she just like, she says, if you don't believe it, all you have to do, you're a human being and you're experiencing me. And if you don't believe me, just tell me. And so, and she would say, like it's even shorthand. We don't even have to talk about it. She says, at the end of a take, I'm going to look at you. You're either going to do that or you're going to do that. So I would say, really? So she said, yeah. And so like, so like and she would just go again. And then she would tell me, just talk to me, talk to me. I would be like, oh, every single take that we did of that scene was you crying. What if we just approached it from a different way and not have you crying in this scene and find someplace else? Or sometimes, I would be like, she was most concerned all the time, and I think as good actors are, that your face is so big on the screen that the most minute gesture is amplified, right? So she was always very concerned if her face was getting too big, if her eyes were like, And so she said, that's something that you have to watch, Bobby. You have to feel like if things are too big, you have to tell me to calm it down. And sometimes I would, and sometimes I'd look at her and I'd be like, you know what, on this take, don't move. Sometimes I would touch her face before taking, she would close her eyes and I would just run my hands over her face, like really slowly. And I would just be like, okay, in this take, nothing. And I would just say that, nothing, 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 nothing. That's your mantra for this take. And she would go into a take and, maybe she will have dropped something, maybe it's not the take ultimately that got used. Sometimes it did, but the idea that we were creating a space where she could relax and be trustful, was a good one. Was a good place for the set. There weren't a lot of people on set. She didn't want a lot of people on set. It was me behind the camera, and it was the sound man. And since we were in the cabin and it was small and we were looking all around often, there was really no place for people to be. So she also liked the idea of creating this kind of sanctuary, so that because it's a character who's alone. So, she just wanted to create that feeling as much as she could. It was a great experience. It was just being in nature like that was amazing.
And what he transported to me was this feeling of liveliness and at the same time intimacy. It didn't feel like it was just a big nature film. And from your process now, I understand why I felt it. Like it felt like there was something speaking to me. There was something personal about the movie. And now I understand. When you hear the process, you understand. So, okay. So you've had many shots and you've had many scenes to shoot. Some scenes are harder than others. What were the hardest? Like a scene where Danielle Deadwyler was receiving her dead son, and it's a very emotionally wrecking scene, or let's say a love scene, or it's a fight scene and it's an action scene. What was your hardest scene to shoot? And like it could be something different, it could be something very intimate with the actors, or it could be something very grand where you had to go with the camera work and all that. Which was it?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's mostly hard when you know that the actor is giving something that they might be only giving once, and so definitely technical things like, you're doing a big wide shot and the camera is high and then a train is coming towards you and you lower it and then somebody gets out of the train. It's very technical, and
Yeah.
and you could make mistakes on that, and it's not so bad that an actor has to get back off the train and get back on the train and get off. The idea that in a scene specifically like Danielle seeing her dead child for the first time in a funeral home, we knew that, you know, from take one, she was just going to give it. And the camera moves a little bit. The camera is moving up, the camera's moving in. So there's another person also who has to be attuned to that. The sound man has to be ready for, like, if the camera gets wired, not to have the microphone in. There's, it's a dance between a few people, but it's so much on you. You can't say at the end of that take, I didn't get it. It's like there's no way that, and I said to everybody around me, me included, there's no way that when the director says cut, and she asks how the take was, all of us have to just go like that. And maybe there was a minute thing that we didn't like, but you know what? It's not about you at that point. It's about that woman. So I must say, it's those scenes where emotionally are very taxing on an actor that are the most difficult scenes, because if you blow those, then you're really not doing your job very well. You know?
Okay, so you collaborated with Oren a lot of times, and you have The Messenger, you have Rampart, you have The Dinner. Okay, because I kind of like The Dinner because I feel it's a very stylistic movie, and it gives you this air of, like the pretentious restaurant that you go to with people, and you're invited, and you feel like, oh my God, I can't believe this, and the ridiculous menus and all that. And there was great shots of even food, and everything. It makes you kind of hungry, but at the same time, it gives you this air of detachment from the movie. Like you don't belong in the setting, although the camera is mostly trapped with these people in this claustrophobic setting. So I want to know how you shot this movie and how you approached this project.
Yeah, to what we talked about from the very beginning, Jaylan, was the idea of white privilege. So you hit the nail right on the head. This is like, every, you're not going to get a piece of bread that doesn't cost $25. The just that sickening feeling of privilege. He comes, the brother of Richard Gere comes in, and um, the they mistake, they don't even recognize him because he's not Richard Gere. Like it's the brother.
Exactly.
So he gets kind of put in a table, and then when the brother comes, they change the table to get to a better table. So much of that story is the horror of that privilege, and how those kids become so disassociated from reality because of where they sit, that they feel like that person, in that poor woman in that ATM, is not even a human being. So, like, to me, to have that setting of the bill for that dinner that night would have supported an entire family for months of food. So it was very important to set up this kind of very closed, privileged place that they exist in, that is off limits to everybody but the 1% at top. And making very tantalizing, like you talk about the food, and some of the shots that took longest to shoot were the shots of the food,
I could imagine.
because we were really trying to get them really rich and really dazzling, and like something that would make you salivate, and something that would move you in a way. It wasn't just a pancake or fried egg on a dish. It was
Yeah, not your hot dog. Yeah.
we were just, we were like, oh, and now that liquid is pouring over and it's melting, and like, just like,
Yeah.
I need a little light to catch a highlight on that when it melts. And so some of those, like, even the director and the first AD were like, these are taking longer than I said. I told you they were going to take long. It's like, the acting is great in that movie. I love Laura Linney. She's an
I love
actor.
her in all movies. She's a
Oh my
great
God.
actress, this woman.
She blew me away. There's a scene in that movie where she tells her husband in the restaurant that we have to, she's like Lady Macbeth. She says like,
Yes.
no, no, we have to like keep this quiet, and we have to save our son. And you're like, wow. Richard Gere had acted in the other film that we shot, Time Out of Mind. So we had worked. That was the second time we were working with him, so he was familiar with us. But I must say, the most inspiring thing on the set to me always is the actors. Of course, the director in the beginning, of course, is the thing that attracts me to the film, and I always respect and love my relationship with the director. But the minute the actors show up, it's so special. It feels like, okay, now it's like a body that's sleeping, and now they've air has come into their lungs, and the blood starts running in their veins, and their eyes open, and there's wetness in their eyes, and then it's like, oh, okay, now it's life, now it's animated, now it's full of feeling, and that becomes the inspiration.
Okay, so Bobby, when I hear you talk, I want to know the movies that move you. Like, do you have certain directors, certain actors, certain genres that just gets your inspiration, gets your juices flowing? Is there a certain particular thing that just inspires you? I want to know because I'm so curious after your talk.
Yeah, to me, again, it's directors that really understand human behavior in a very specific way. And most of them are European, and most of them are directors that made movies last century. Um, Ingmar Bergman is one of my favorite directors because,
Definitely.
again, you look at Lee Volman's face in those movies, and it's telling the whole story. It's all about relationships. On the American side, John Cassavetes is an
Oh,
amazing
Woman Under the
director.
Influence is like the movie. Oh my general, hello. What is this magnificence
No, talk about best performances of the ages.
ever?
Yeah. No, no. So it's that. Could you imagine being in that room, and experiencing that? So I saw Scorsese's movie, his new one, Killers of the Flower Moon. I just saw it the other day, and I think it's quite a masterpiece. And again, um, he takes a story that you think it could just be some conventional crime or whodunit FBI kind of movie, and he makes it a movie about um, the love or even the dysfunctional love between two people, and finds the heart in the movie there, and makes a beautiful. The movie is harrowing. It's just so hard to take because it's about betrayal of someone that you think loves you, and it's
It's so
betrayal. So
scary.
so
Yeah,
I feel like, those two, Scorsese is another one. Robert Altman, American director, was a director
definitely. I
that I
love
really
Robert Altman.
um
God,
Nashville is one of my favorite movies ever.
he's
Just
a great.
he's just, and it's always so much going on in his movies, and so much to grab onto. So to me, it's films about humanity and about
Humanity.
human feeling, and how do we behave, and what is our existential, plight of being under the thrall of gravity that we are as human beings, that we're bound to the earth. And I feel like those moments in films that make you forget about gravity and that you float are something that is something to try to achieve um, in a film. And a film could do that because it can go beyond reality. I'm not the biggest fan of action. I like horror. I just like horror because I like scaring myself.
I love
And
horror too. Yeah.
it's a treat. I like being with some friends on a cold, dark night, and just like everybody like scared about
Yeah.
something, So I like that. And fantasy movies that are done really beautifully are like, I thought the last Dune movie was, I don't know if you saw Dune,
Yeah,
and
and I can't wait for the second one.
me
Yeah.
too. And it was spectacular, and just,
I love Denis. Yeah.
I just love when you you know, a world is created so purely that doesn't exist, but yet you feel that it does. I really like that. I think fantasy is a good media for film because we can create anything we want visually, audioly.
Exactly. Okay, so what I want to ask you is like, what does Bobby aspire to? Like, what do you dream of doing? Do you have something on your plate right now, or are you planning on something?
Right now, it's a little tough because the actors and writers have been on strike in
Yes.
America, so everything's been on hold. And there's a film, a very small film, and it's a film that will take place in New York City, and it's about a young gay black boy who is aspiring to be a ballerina, and he's living in a ghetto basically. Um, his father is cop and homophobic and throws him out of the house. So it's about this kid who is trying to aspire to his dreams, but in the worst situation possible, living on the streets of New York, getting influenced by drugs and all these elements, but yet still trying to hold on to this dream. And the place where he finds light and life and is when he's dancing. So the consistent dream that I always have had all through my life for as long as I can remember are my dreams of flying. And I love having flying dreams because when you have those dreams, there's no doubt in your mind that you're flying. I don't care that people say you're dreaming. At that moment that you're dreaming, what's the difference between your subconscious and your conscious mind? It's all your brain. It's
Yeah.
all. So to me, like I've stopped questioning dreams as dreams and saying it's just another plane of existence where my mind is existing in. Um, so when I think about this movie of dancing, and I started talking a lot to dancers, and I said, "What is the thing about dancing?" And they said, so many of them said, when you leap off the ground and you're in the air for that suspended second, you have defied gravity. And it was like, it spoke to me so personally because that's what I always feel. So this is a film that I'm really excited about shooting because I want to depict, I told the director, I don't want to just shoot dancing. We've seen enough of like, we turn on a music video and we see choreography. But I really want to shoot what it feels like to be a dancer. I want the camera to be a dancer, not be an audience to a dancer. So the idea of I was telling the director that I would like to wire up some actors so that when they leap, they take a leap. And then the next time they leap a little higher. And then the next time we've put wire on them, but you can't see it. And now they just go right out of the frame up into the
Wow.
air. Because that's when you talk to a dancer, that's what it feels like.
This is
So
their feeling.
yeah, so to me, so much of cinematography is not about trying to show you something. I'm trying to make you feel something.
That's true. And that's the truest form of art. Bobby Bukowski, thank you so much. You've been a great and gracious guest, and I feel honored talking to you. You made me defy gravity with your
Oh, great.
talking and your art, and I thank you so much.
Oh, you're quite welcome. I enjoyed it. I wish now we could leave this meeting and I could meet you down at the cafe, your favorite
Oh,
cafe by the seaside in Alexandria.
yes, yes. Someday I'm sure of that. Someday we'll meet. I tell
I'm gonna
you.
hold I'm gonna hold you to that, okay?
Okay, yes, yes.
Okay. Get some sleep.
All
All
right.
right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.